First, double-click the session proc and drag a list object onto the procedure. Next, right-click on the list object and rename it to Design List. Double-click on the design list to open it up. First thing we're going to do is add 3 attributes. So click on the double arrow pointing to the right and add 3. And we're going to rename each attribute, the first being condition, the next stimulus, and correct response. Click on the down arrow to add another row. Now type trial proc under the procedure attribute to add a new procedure. Click yes, and click yes again. Now type trial proc in row 2 as well. Now we're going to fill in the condition attribute. We'll name the top one word and the bottom one non-word. Next, enter in the stimuli, cat in row 1 and jop in row 2. Next, we'll enter the correct response for each trial. 1 will be the correct response for a word, and 2 the correct response for a non-word. Now, click on the trial proc procedure and add 2 text displays. Rename the first text display to fixation and the second text display to probe. Double-click on the fixation text display and add a plus sign for the fixation cross. Now go to the property pages and click on the duration tab. Ensure that the duration says 1000 milliseconds and press OK. Now double-click on the probe text box and click on the property pages. Enter the word stimulus within square brackets into the text display box. The square brackets tells Eprime to look for the stimulus attribute in our design list. In this case, the text will read cat or jop depending on the trial. Now, click on the Duration Input tab and change the duration to 2000 milliseconds and add the keyboard as an input device. Change the allowable keyboard response to 1 and 2 and type correct response within square brackets next to the correct heading. The square brackets tells Eprime to look under the correct response attribute in our design list to determine the correct response for each trial. In this case, the correct response to a word will be 1 and the correct response to a non-word will be 2. Change the data logging from none to standard and click OK. Next, create a new folder and save your experiment. Finally, run the experiment to make sure it's working properly. Now we're going to convert this experiment to a nested list experiment. First, save the experiment and rename it to nested list. Next, open up the design list and create 2 new nested lists by entering words into the first row under the nested attribute and non-words into the second row under the nested attribute. You'll notice that 2 new lists have been created under the design list. These are the nested lists. You can now delete the stimulus attribute from the design list. The word and non-word stimuli will now come from the nested list we created. Open up the words list and create a new attribute called stimulus. Enter 4 new rows by clicking the double down arrow and entering the number 4. Now enter the stimuli cat, dog, time, bike, and glove under the stimulus attribute. Next, open up the non-words list and create the stimulus attribute again and create 4 new rows. Now add 4 non-words, jop, le, det, jat, and mo. Click on the property pages of the design list and click on the Reset Exit tab. Change the number of cycles to 5. Since we have a total of 10 words, 5 words and 5 non-words, 5 cycles are needed to tell Eprime to present all 10 words. Now save and run the experiment. It should look something like this.